A function is a mapping or transformation from an input to an output. Here's a function f from a to b. And perhaps you remember from school that a is called the domain of f and b is called the codomain of f. And here's how we represent this function. We will see more of these images in the category theory section. Here are two examples of functions. Function f, which is a function from an int to an int where the input is x, and function g, which is a function from string to int where the input is a string. Here's another example of a function that takes a list of string as input and returns its size, and the corresponding diagram on the right. A nice thing you can do with functions is composition, which is a way to combine functions. Given a function f from a to b and a function g from b to c, we can create a function h from a to c using composition. You read this as g circle f, and the circle represents composition. In Scala, this is written as g compose f, which does g of f at x. And we represent composition in this way, which tell us that it's possible to go from A to C through B, but we can also go straight from A to C using the compose function g circle f. And this is what the Scala syntax looks like for composition of a function that applies tax and then applies discount to that result. Another example of function composition is if you have a list of strings, a size function, and a greater than function, which in this case is curried and has one of the parameters already set to 10. What you can do is you pass the list through the size function and get an int, then take this int and pass it through the greater than curried function, and you get a boolean. Composition is an associative operation. This means that you can go from A to D in a few ways. So from A, go to B via F, then jump to D via H composed with G. Or from A, you can jump to C via G composed with F, and then using H, go to D. Or you can take the long way from A to B to C to D. In Scala, there is syntax to make composition a little bit nicer. You can use andThen to write composition in a way that's easier to follow. So if we use our f and g functions from earlier, we write h equals g composed with f, but we can also write it as f and then g. Going back to our tax and discount example, you can write apply tax and then apply discount, then pass the parameter total cost to this new function. Higher order functions are functions that can take other functions as arguments, or they can return functions. And here's the syntax for that. The first example has a method map which takes function f from A to B as a parameter, and the second example underneath shows method myMap taking the same function as parameter and returning a function also from A to B. The first line shows the definition of myMap, which applies the given function to input of type A. Then we define function f on line 2 as an anonymous function, which takes an int called x and adds 1 to it. This is the parameter of method myMap. Function g is the result function that is returned by method myMap. And you can see it has the type A to B, where both a and b are integers. On line 3, we test function g to make sure it returns input plus 1. So if you give it a 3, we get back a 4.